the energy source, the wands of Horus, and the structures of deep meditation. For long millennia the Great Pyramids preserved the mystery of a secret room containing, according to legend, either secrets of a special kind of some sort of knowledge that would give the finder power over the world. Men have been searching for that knowledge for many centuries already. They looked for it within the twin hump rock on which the body of the pyramid rests. Thought they also looked for beneath the pyramid. But the room is not where they were looking but in the upper part of the pyramid, at a point defined by the ratio 0.118:0.882. That chamber contains the energy source which the ancient Egyptians inherited from the people of Atlantis who had come to northern Africa long before the heyday of Egyptian civilization. This source takes the form of a cylinder within which is a special crystal with a lattice structure close in parameters to that of quartz crystals. Almost all the most astonishing phenomena observed in and around the pyramid are connected with the presence of this very device. The sense of creating and using the energy source lies in its capacity to affect the structure of time and space in the vicinity of its location. The shape of the pyramid serves to intensify this effect and disperses the incoming energy in the area of the pyramid. Besides that, though, the energy source affects human psychological and physical structure. Pick up any book about ancient Egyptian culture and take a close look at the statues of the pharaohs. You will see that they are all clasping cylinder-like objects in their hands. The energy source that was constructed in the proportions of the golden section entered into resonant interaction with the cylinders held in the hands because they too were created in the proportions of the golden section. Apart from that, however, both these devices were constructed, one might say, in a single image and likeness, as a kind of miniature model of certain energy processes that arise cyclically in the biosphere and the space around a human being. That, in turn, determines yet another level of interaction between them. Those cylinders, with which the pharaohs never parted throughout their lives, were harmonizers of the two basic flows of energy which the ancient Egyptians called Ba and Ka, corresponding to yin and yang in the Oriental tradition. For the ancient Egyptians, Ba and Ka were the two component elements of the human entity, the two sources of vital energy. While they are interacting properly, the vital functions of the organism are maintained and the person lives without any particular problems. To regulate the energy balance in the body, the ancient Egyptians used wands of Horus, cylinders with various contents. This sculptural group symbolically reflects this phenomenon. The Ka cylinder is in the right hand of the god Heru, Horus. The male figure symbolizes the flow of yang energy, the male principle. The deity is an embodiment of the energy plane. The yin cylinder is in the left hand of the goddess Isis, who represents the female principle, that is to say the flow of Ba energy. In the center is Osiris, with two energy-giving hands directed towards him. The use of these cylinders to a considerable extent helped the pharaoh, or other user, to perfect his nervous, energetic hand. As a consequence, immune systems, to improve his health and physical condition, since the cylinders had a beneficial effect on those areas. The correct and systematic use of the cylinders enabled the pharaoh or priestly user to prepare himself for intercourse with the gods. The cylinder for the right hand was made from copper and associated with the sun, Yang. The cylinder for the left hand was made from zinc and associated with the moon, Yin. Placed within the cylinders were minerals that were changed as the pharaoh made advances in the process of self-perfection. The filling in the initial phase was a special kind of white sand. Cylinders containing white sand have a positive effect on a person's energy channels, activating them. As the transformational processes progressed, large-grained quartzite was added to the cylinders. This photograph, taken in the Metropolitan Museum, New York, in the autumn of 1999 shows the cylinders of Pharaoh Pepi II. To reinforce the properties of the cylinders, gold was added to the copper in the appropriate proportion, on account of which the sun cylinder was also called the gold cylinder. silver was added to the moon cylinder, which was accordingly called the silver cylinder. These cylinders were produced in the proportions of the golden section, while their dimensions were determined on the basis of the state of the given person's energy system and health, and the tasks being pursued. To give an example, in the event of disharmony where the Ba or yin type of energy was clearly dominant, to restore balance and harmony the ancient Egyptians used only the copper yang cylinder, which was held in the right hand. These two sculptures depict a situation of this kind. The men represented here evidently had problems connected with an imbalance, an excess of yin energy, the female principle, which in males can lead, for example, to metabolic disorders, reduced sexual activity and a number of other fairly serious disorders. For proper harmonization it is better to use both cylinders at the same time, but the yang one should be larger than the yin one, making it possible to bring the yang up to the necessary level. Subsequent use of identical cylinders makes it possible to harmonize the two flows of energy. If a person has an excess of yang, which is quite often the case with women in particular, leading possibly to certain hormonal disturbances, then the use of the cylinders, a larger yin and a smaller yang, produces an evening out, after which identically sized cylinders should be used for subsequent harmonization. But that is not all. A pharaoh wears a rather strange elongated headdress that is customarily taken to be a crown. This headdress is actually a special concentrator, focused on the hypophysis and the hypothalamus, more precisely on their energetic projections, and tuned to the pyramid and the energy source within it. The whole complex, the energy source within the pyramid, the cylinders held in the hands, and the concentrator, on the pharaoh's head, is directly connected on certain days, cycles, of the year with the pyramids and their effect. The pyramid, being simultaneously both antenna and resonator, is a retransmitter of certain energy flows arising from processes taking place in the cosmos, flows that are in turn focused on the energy source inside the pyramid. The influence of this complex and its correct interaction with human consciousness produced the effect of intercourse with the gods. The immense pyramid complex at Giza was, in essence, a deep meditation structure enabling the pharaoh or priest to make contact with the noosphere, the Earth's informational systems, and on occasion, even with representatives of other planetary systems. This picture, familiar from American banknotes, is a symbol of the act of intercourse with the gods achieved with the aid of the pyramid, a symbol that has come down to us through the centuries. The eye is in the upper part of the pyramid, the place where the energy source is located, and in this case symbolizes the Holy Spirit with which the pharaoh or priest entered into contact when the source was activated. Today it is well known that people who make contact with the noosphere, or informational field, very often see this eye. The all-seeing eye is a symbol that was given to mankind from above and is not a human invention. The eye was seen by pharaohs and priests during certain phases of cult rituals. That is why the symbol occurs in many Hermetic knowledge systems and religions. The outlines of phenomena whose secret has been preserved for millennia emerge from the mists of time, and we begin to grasp the hidden meaning of the legacy handed down to us and the true reasons for the building of the pyramids. The pharaoh obtained information through intercourse with the gods, or, as we might say today, close encounters. It was this fact, coupled with longevity, that placed the pharaoh in an exceptional position, where he was considered to be God's representative on earth. However, the role of the Hierophant priests in all this seems to have been something absolutely unique. Although he had become God's representative on earth, the pharaoh still remained in a certain degree of ignorance. The pharaoh evidently did not know what the Hierophants knew. Here is the evidence of that. Hassi-Ra, mentioned earlier, was the leader of the 10 of the South, that is to say the 11th and the most senior group of Hierophant priests. Hassi-Ra's tomb contained 11 panels, one of which, the title page, was called Dekanos, Chief of 10. That means that 11 fields of depiction are presented on the outer faces, and the same number on the reverse, where there are diagrams that would appear to explain the use of the technology of the canon in the compositional structure of this or that picture. Now let us recall ancient Egypt's main propositions, principles, about the structure of the universe are expounded in 22 arcana, which were grouped in 2 blocks of 11. The first block formulated basic ideas about the world. The number 11 was a magic one, number of power, because the first element of the second stage, tier, of the decimal system is the first, pattern setting, step of the following 2-digit layer. At the same time it is the chief, the hierarch of the preceding group of 10. So, while Hassi-Ra was the 11th, that is the hierarch of the supreme 10, of the south, concluding and setting the pattern, the pharaoh was the 12th and did not belong to the group. Here is a text written in praise of some outstanding scribes. Is the like of Jedifer to be found anywhere? Is there anyone to compare with Imhotep? There is none among us like Nephri, and Hadi is the foremost of all. From text 1, then, it emerges that there was in ancient Egypt someone named Hadi. Had in translation from Coptic can be read as receptacle of reason. Among the other names mentioned in the text, Imhotep is a historically attested figure, so is Jedifer. Hadi is not an invented character either. But why was he in particular singled out for such great praise? In order to understand what it meant to be greater than Imhotep, for one, let us turn to another specific text, the vizier of the pharaoh of Lower Egypt, first after the pharaoh of Upper Egypt, steward of the great chamber, honored citizen, great priest of Heliopolis, Imhotep, the builder and sculptor. So we see that the pharaoh alone was superior to Imhotep. The same source contains a text giving evidence of the social status of Hassi-Ra, head of the Shiites and head of To, head of the physicians, scribe of the pharaoh, confidant of the pharaoh, priest of Horus, chief architect of the pharaoh, supreme head of the 10 of the south and carver. Comparing the administrative functions of these two representatives of the priestly caste, we find that Imhotep was only a builder, one who carried out construction work, while Hassi-Ra was chief architect of the pharaoh, the man to whom the pharaoh entrusted the designing. In ancient Egypt, of course, they did not make the strong distinction we do today between the architect-designer and the contractor-builder. Both functions were combined in the same person. Yet even if we accept that Imhotep was an architect, Hassi-Ra is styled chief architect of the pharaoh, the highest of the high. In this titular respect, his status in the sphere of architecture was certainly superior to Imhotep's. Yet, let us not forget that popular hearsay reckoned that it was Imhotep who worked out the canon. It follows that the common people knew about Imhotep, while no rumors circulated about the person of Hassi-Ra. This indicates that either Hassi-Ra occupied a lesser position in the hierarchy or, on the contrary, was so important a figure that his name and, most importantly, his powers were kept secret. The reason may have lain in Hassi-Ra's extensive erudition in the arcane sciences, from which derived above all the knowledge of harmony that embraced all spheres of activity. In that case, though, we require convincing evidence that Hassi-Ra was entrusted with functions indicating involvement with that field. And we do have them. In text 3 above, Hassi-Ra is called a priest of Horus. At first sight this is a fairly humble position, but if we recall that Horus was the symbol of harmony, because in the sacred 3 to 4:5 triangle the sides forming the right angle were given the names of Isis and Osiris, the parents of Horus, while the name of Horus designated the hypotenuse, the parameter for harmonious connection between the parents. The social standing of Hassi-Ra immediately becomes several orders higher than the priestly rank of Imhotep. To be a priest of Horus meant to act the guardian of the knowledge of harmony. Notable in this context is the reference to Hassi-Ra's head of the physicians. The thing is that knowledge of the laws of harmony extended above all to an understanding of the structure of the human organism, the principle of Ba and Ka, on account of which healing was conducted on the basis of knowledge encoded in the canon. This method was widely practiced in both East and West. Indications of this kind can also be found in ancient Indian treatises. Hasi Ra could be the head of physicians only if he was involved in compiling the canon, or was acquainted with its subtlest nuances. We should assume therefore that Hasi Ra was not only the nominal head of physicians, but a master of the methodology of healing, since he was sufficiently well versed in the technology of the canon. The architect's exceptional intellectual abilities were evidently the reason for his appointment as scribe of the pharaoh. The monarch's thoughts had to be set down not verbatim, but with deep understanding, and corrections if required. Just think what it meant to set down the thoughts of the pharaoh. It is more than possible that Hasi Ra was not only the person who prepared the pharaoh and brought him to the state in which intercourse with the gods became possible, but also the interpreter of the information that the pharaoh received during such acts. Today we are well aware that the information received by people during close encounters is often contradictory and requires careful analysis and interpretation. The modest title confidant of the pharaoh suggests that Hasi Ra fulfilled the role of privy councillor. One would imagine that there was no higher social rung in ancient Egypt than that occupied by Hasi Ra, who then should have been entrusted with the design of the first large-scale pyramid, the Pyramid of Djoser, Imhotep or Hasi Ra. After all, it emerges quite unequivocally from the service records of the two higher-ranking figures that Imhotep was allotted executive functions, while Hasi Ra, the scholar-thinker, was among those engaged in prediction. In addition to which, he was head of the Hierophants. Remember that Hierophant priest means one knowing destiny or foreseeing the future. That means that if Imhotep was first after the pharaoh, Hasi Ra ranked above the pharaoh, because kings do not make the rules for grammarians. That is why Imhotep was only a builder and Hasi Ra chief architect of the pharaoh. That means that at the time of Pharaoh's Djoser there was a man superior to the pharaoh himself, but information about him was not spread about in the world in order to preserve the secret knowledge of which Hasi Ra had a perfect mastery. These circumstances allow us to present a sufficiently sound argument that a man named Hadi, the foremost of all, was elevated to the status of a deity Ra, Hasi Ra, for working out the aesthetic, and therefore also ecological, principles of the canon, reflecting the harmonious foundations of the universe. The actual idea of using the golden section in architecture today, together with the creation of complexes of pyramidal energy structures, is the chief element in solving the problems of the ecology of housing, the ecology of the mental environment, and in the process of coming to an understanding of the world. This is the very key issue, recognition and implementation of which might become the start of our ascent to the next rung of evolution. For this reason a whole section of this article should be devoted to it. For the moment, however, we shall only indicate what the pyramid is in principle. The pyramid is, a powerful cosmic antenna, b, a model in stone of the energy structure of the human being and of the universe, using the latter's energy mechanism, c, a very powerful generator of cosmic energies operating on various planes, pyramidal energy structures, whose positioning should be decided with reference to the energy qualities of the location. Open up the following possibilities. 1. Tapping into natural flows of cosmic energy, the organization and stimulation of evolutionary processes in the biosphere and in human consciousness. 2. The reorganization and correction of the human energetic structure, making it possible to stimulate internal energetic, biophysical and physiological processes, which in turn provide the opportunity to discover and activate the inner resources of the human psyche, increasing psychic potential. 3. A positive influence on the immune and nervous systems, leading to their improvement. 4. an improvement of mankind's energo-ecological environment, an increase and improvement of the energy state at the pyramid's location and, as a consequence of the spread of pyramidal structures throughout the world, a reorganization of the planet's energy structure within the next 10 to 15 years. Pyramidal energy structures may play a decisive role in the fate of the new generation, changing their level of awareness. Incidentally, any architectural structure founded on the principles of the golden section will possess the same qualities as the pyramids. Therefore, if we start to use the principles in designing and building houses, our dwellings will have the same effect on us as the pyramids, stimulating our creative activities and positively influencing our organism and consciousness. Throughout the course of history, mankind has constantly striven to implement one idea or another, founded on the conceptual and moral level of the era, and, as a rule, dictated by the personal interests of those who advocated the idea. To be more exact, that facet, that force within mankind that was formed by human weakness, the yearning for power and material benefits, realized itself through mankind. But there is pure knowledge, and there is that which was done in response to the needs of those living at the time. Therefore the pyramids were different depending on the ideas that were invested in them and the goals being pursued. The actual idea of the pyramid, its essence, is a cosmic phenomenon, but human weakness and self-seeking forced people to use the pyramids for personal ends and not those of all mankind. Many thousand years of human history have passed, but the same applies today, setting the tone for the actions of the majority of people. And even the great spiritual discoveries of the present day do not change man for the better. The paradoxical thing about man is that for all his professed striving to create a bright future for the whole of humanity, he for some strange reason uses knowledge that is the property of all for his personal ends. That is precisely the manifestation of that very force which through human weaknesses, placing personal interests before those of everyone, rules the world. Yet there is the path of increasing understanding, and it cannot be a path for the select few. Humanity will take its final step in its evolutionary ascent as a single organism. Everybody together, and if only a single person is not ready for that step, then we will not be able to take it. We will have to wait for the last one, and then we will all move on. And there is no end to that journey.